This video will break down the most insane Boruto theory that you have heard in a while, and I guarantee that you will eventually come back to this video to see how close we were to actually predicting the truth. Yes, Shibai is controlling Kashin Koji, and I am 76% sure of that. There are 3 parts to this theory: Kashin Koji's origins, Shibai's divine interventions in the story, and Boruto's powers to counter that. This is a pretty long video and took quite some time to make. So yes you watching this video right now, like and hype up this video, as this is going to be one to remember. Let's start off with a question. How would you describe Kashin Koji? Is he a cheerful guy, or would you describe him as mellow and passionate? Or maybe an honest working shinobi? But wait a moment, you can't actually describe him, and I can't either. This is intentional from Ikemoto. If you read the story in Japanese, you would notice that every character has moments where their tonality changes. And that's something that makes quite a bit of sense because of their personality. There are moments when they are happy, which is showcased in their language, and moments where they are serious or laid back. But Kashin Koji doesn't have these changes at all. He is always the same tone, the same seriousness, and the same attitude. And that's because he doesn't actually have a personality. No, personality wouldn't be the best way to describe it. The best way to put it is that Kashin Koji doesn't have an identity of his own. Kashin Koji is actually no one, which is why he is the perfect person to be controlled, as he can never realize it himself because he doesn't know who he is himself. The first part of this video is explaining this point to later understand why he is actually being controlled by somebody else. And that person is Ino, the finest woman in the Boruto series. And of course I'm talking about her adult version. Hold up, this is the wrong script. I mean that person is Shibai, the Otsutsuki who transcended this dimension, discarding his body and ascending into a higher one. But this move made him lose control over this dimension, as you need a body in order to operate it. But he discarded his body. So in order to regain control, he needs a puppet, a tool. And who better to use as a tool than a shinobi? As just like Kashin Koji said himself, shinobi are nothing but tools. And this wording right here comes from the old understanding of what a shinobi is, but it ultimately defines Kashin Koji's character. The character that most resembles Kashin Koji is Mitsuki, as they both are clones of a member of the Great Sanin, Jiraiya for Kashin Koji and Orochimaru for Mitsuki. The only problem is that Mitsuki developed free will, which Kashin Koji has not. Kashin Koji has remained a tool to be used. This is exactly how Ishiki describes Kashin Koji in his fight against him, as this is how Ishiki describes Kashin Koji. But a little bit of context to this conversation. It starts off with Ishiki trying to understand why Kashin Koji and Amato betrayed him. This is where Kashin Koji describes his purpose. He says, "My motive is simple. I have no interest in the chakra fruit. From the very beginning, I was created to kill you." Ishiki responds to that by saying that Kashin Koji is a pathetic man, and that no matter what way you put it, you are being used by Amato. Kashin Koji replies by saying that he is fine with that. He is fine with being a tool, as shinobis are tools. Kashin Koji is a tool, as he says himself, that was given purpose by Amato. That purpose being to kill Ishiki. This is the purpose that defined Kashin Koji. And when he realizes that he was lied to by Amato about his actual purpose, he starts to crack. Kashin Koji wasn't created to kill Ishiki, but to force him to revive himself in Jigen's body. Kashin Koji in this fight refuses to believe Ishiki, as that would rob him of the purpose he believed to have. It would rob him of what he was created for, his identity. But when he realizes that this is true, he starts to accept his death. As even though Amato lied, at least now he knows what his true purpose is as a tool, and can die. This is exactly what Ishiki tells him would happen at the end of this fight. You will understand why your purpose was to only be a pawn for the first stage of this battle, not the last, meaning that his purpose was not to kill Ishiki, as if that was his purpose, he would have been strong enough to do so. But because he is not strong enough to take Ishiki's down, He accepts that fate and was about to die, as his purpose would have been complete in that moment, to force Ishiki to revive in Jigen's body. But no, he didn't die, as Kashin Koji was given a new purpose, to save the world from the worst possible future through SHIBAI'S powers. SHIBAI'S powers, which awakened when he lost his purpose, ready to accept death. Then SHIBAI gave Kashin Koji purpose, which is why he retreated. Which means that yet again Kashin Koji is being used, but this time by SHIBAI ŌTSUTSUKI himself. Because think about it, if Kashin Koji didn't see himself as a tool and actually had his own identity and his own personality, Kashin Koji's next move would have been to get his revenge on Ikemoto, or at least confront him. That's what Ishiki believed that he would do, and the reason why he escaped, as Ishiki thought that Kashin Koji's next move was to go and get revenge from Ikemoto. And this is what we thought too when we saw that Kashin Koji was the one who was actually training with Boruto. We thought that after that, one of the big plans for Kashin Koji was to go and confront Ikemoto himself, and we would ultimately see what would happen, whether Kashin Koji will kill him or not. But that could never be the case for Kashin Koji, because unlike Mitsuki, Kashin Koji doesn't have an identity, but instead a new purpose that was not given to him by himself, but it was given to him by the powers of SHIBAI. He now has changed masters and is the tool of SHIBAI's will in this dimension without even realizing it. Ikemoto confirms this when he sees Kashin Koji's toes in the battlefield. He says, what is he trying to do so late in the game? Ikemoto knows that Kashin Koji's purpose has been completed, so why is he still here? Why is this tool still operating after its purpose has been completed? And this is not to bash Kashin Koji in any regard, to say that he is not human, but it is to illustrate who Kashin Koji is, so we can understand where the story is pointing us to. And now, when you see this, you simply can't unsee it. For example, when Boruto was about to get captured by the Senju in chapter 4, Boruto saw Hidari, who he looked at as Sasuke. He lost control, he rushed the plan, trying to eliminate Hidari at that moment, where we had a Kashin Koji who told Boruto multiple times that he should retreat, but he didn't. And when he finally did, we had a Kashin Koji who doesn't confront him in a way that most people would think to console him. Instead, he directly tells Boruto that he's not trying to console him at all. Kashin Koji then points out to Boruto that his moves are rash and not rational at all. Kashin Koji has not shown any sort of emotion at any time in the series. He is too nonchalant. Even Boruto, who lost everything, his master, his family, his life in the village, we still see moments for Boruto when he smiles. You can see the human inside Boruto. But for Kashin Koji, there is no human. There never was one in the first place. He has been soulless since the beginning. This is why Kashin Koji is always the same if you check every single panel. The same outline, the same seriousness. You can't really read Kashin Koji. He is a bot. An NPC is the best way to put it. And that's why all of his decisions are ultra rational and don't consider feelings at all, because he doesn't have them. He's literally an AI, a tool that has been used. But the real question is who is programming him? And that person is SHIBAI. What I believe took place is that through the genetic factor in his making, the fact that he has SHIBAI cells, Kashin Koji is now connected with SHIBAI. There are two ways this could be represented in the story. The first one being that Kashin Koji had a code-like experience where he met and talked with SHIBAI. This could be something similar to what Code had with Ishiki. Or the second option is that SHIBAI, without interacting with Kashin Koji himself, is feeding Kashin Koji visions of the future that influence the path that the story will take. And as of right now, the path that Ikemoto is currently hinting towards is that of the second explanation. The hint that Ikemoto gives us is the fact that Kashin Koji is not able to see the future whenever he wants to. He is only able to see updates in the future every so often. The minimum we have been told was 6 days, but that doesn't mean that it is the average, meaning that SHIBAI gives him updates whenever he sees it fit. This would explain why Kashin Koji couldn't find or stop Code before, as he wasn't given an update on what would happen after he started training with Boruto that would give him Code's location when he was actually on Earth. As we know that Code roamed Earth looking for Boruto, but they couldn't find Code either. Shibai most likely didn't want Code to be stopped at that point. He needed the Senju to come to be for his plan. The second hint comes in the fact that Kashin Koji is not an Otsutsuki, so he can't control the powers to a full degree. Usually what happens is that the Senjutsu expresses the user's strongest desire if they are not an Otsutsuki. We can clearly see this with Ida, as she claims that she had a strong desire to have friends, and thus Sarada and Sume did not get affected by her charm ability that she manifests through omnipotence, and thus Sarada and Sume were not affected by her omnipotence. But this also tells us that Ida most likely had a strong desire to be desired by everyone around her, regardless of her gender, giving her the power known as charm through omnipotence, which the story will most likely explore later on. But let's apply this to Kashin Koji. First, he isn't an Otsutsuki. Second, what is Kashin Koji's strongest desire as a tool? The strongest desire for a tool is to have purpose. Ikemoto directly shows this to us in the fight versus Ishiki, as the only time we see Kashin Koji act in a way that showed a hint of emotion, it was when Ishiki told him that he no longer had purpose. We can see Kashin Koji almost start glitching and becoming delusional, refusing to accept that fact. It is in this arc that we see him awaken Shibai's abilities, because it is in that arc that he ends up losing his purpose, or at least his purpose was completed. And now, in that moment, he had the strongest desire to regain a new purpose. And thus, as a non-Otsutsuki, he gained prescience, as a strong desire is what is necessary to control and awaken Senjutsu as a non-Otsutsuki. Hold on, you can clearly see here that Ikemoto is cooking, and this makes me question everything in Boruto right now. This makes so much sense, and the writing for it is peak. Prescience is the ability Shibai gifted Kashin Koji as a response to his strongest desire for purpose. But because Kashin Koji is a tool at the end of the day, he cannot create purpose for himself. This is where Shibai, this god, gives him his will to enact, giving the shinobi tool a mission, not by speaking to him or even appearing to him physically, but by embedding it in his own genetic code, manipulating the visions he gets to see for Shibai's own personal end goal. This is why Mitsuki's character will definitely finish in a different way from Kashin Koji, as although he is a clone, we see something different being expressed in his character when he fights versus Boruto. Boruto, who is Mitsuki's son, a major part of Mitsuki's design purpose. We see in the fight that Boruto has versus Mitsuki that Boruto tells him to become his own son, so that Mitsuki himself can create his own purpose and not be a tool. Because that's what it means to be human, to be able to create purpose for oneself. And Kashin Koji can't do that for himself, and thus Shibai does. And this is not the only sign of Shibai's presence in the story, as Jura himself describes Boruto still being alive and not being killed in chapter 13 as a divine intervention. And Shibai is most likely the reason why Kashin Koji trained Boruto in the first place. He did not look for Kawaki, he looked for Boruto, as Boruto is central in Shibai's will. This is ultimately the reason why Boruto has not been able to see the future for himself. The past few chapters have illustrated that Boruto will take his own actions and work towards what he deems to be the best future, one that doesn't require people dying as sacrificial pawns who didn't personally choose to die for that cause. And Boruto is willing to make a deal with the devil to prevent those people from dying, as he is the only one actively choosing that he will put his life on the line to protect the future. And this is why Momoshiki's future sight ability perfectly complements Boruto, as his way of seeing the future allows him to see the future that involves himself, and not the future that involves others. This is why for Boruto and his character, it is perfect, as Boruto focuses on his own individual actions, regardless of those of others. Man, to me, this is actually perfect because we can clearly see how multiple of the powers that these characters have reflect something about their character, and we can use that to figure out the future abilities that they will showcase. Right now, we have Kashin Koji, who, based off prescience, has seen the future and determined that Kobu has to be killed. However, Boruto will counteract that with the future that he ends up seeing and will at least attempt to save Kobu's life. Whether Kobu is killed or not, we don't necessarily know, but I can guarantee you this, and you can come back to this video when I am right, that Boruto will at least try and attempt to save Kobu's life. Because Momoshiki has given Boruto access to his abilities when he says use whatever you would like. And Future Sight has been one of those unique Momoshiki abilities that Boruto has been able to manifest in the past. And it is connected to the Byakugan, as Boruto had the Byakugan when he used this ability for the first time. And he will have it when he uses it again, as we have already seen Boruto use the Byakugan. And now he will then end up using this Byakugan Future Sight ability that Momoshiki possesses. And Ikemoto is not slick with this at all. This has already been planned out. As why, out of all the questions that he could have answered, why does he end up comparing these two abilities in an interview? He compares Momoshiki's Future Sight and Kashin Koji's Prescience, to hint at the eventual clash that will take place between Boruto and Kashin Koji, as Boruto is saving people from the worst future, while Kashin Koji is using people to prevent the worst future from taking place. This is Kashin Koji and Boruto's current dynamic. And ultimately, what does this truly resemble? This approach of sacrificing people. I know it's not on the same scale, but this is very Otsutsuki-like. This utilitarian aspect as a means to a cause is something central in Kashin Koji's character in the time skip so far. And that's why it is quite important to discuss both of their moralities and understand why Boruto and Kashin Koji will not be working together for too much longer. But you may say, oh, the Otsutsukis are evil and Kashin Koji, as of right now, although he has connections with SHIBAI'S, he hasn't done anything evil. But in this recent chapter, I don't think we can keep on saying that. Because if you ask me based off this chapter, is what Kashin Koji doing evil? The answer I would give you would be a yes and a no, but I would most likely lean towards yes. And this is why I present you guys with the trolley problem. And this is something that you guys who are watching at this part in the video, first of all, thank you. So I ask you guys this question. What would you choose in this scenario? We have a train track that is moving along, and we have 5 people that are designated to go along that train track and be killed, and you have a lever. But if you pull the lever, you have another guy who is not designated to die, but if you pull it, you'd be killing 1 person instead of 5. The logical answer in this case is to say that, okay, 5 lives is definitely more valuable than 1. So I'm going to pull the lever and kill that 1 person. That would be a utilitarianistic approach that you'd be taking. But there are multiple different problems and things to be said. In this case, you would be aligning with the views of Kashin Koji, that saving 5 lives is better than saving 1. But the only problem with this case is that it still makes your action evil, because you ended up killing that 1 person. Regardless of your intent, that action is wrong. That's a stance from deontology, that regardless of whatever you do, there are still acts that are immoral, and killing a person remains an immoral act regardless of the reason why. It doesn't say that you shouldn't do it, but it still says that the act is an immoral one. This is ultimately an interesting case and something that people have told me as a counter to Kashin Koji, but this scenario doesn't perfectly match with the one in the story. And this is why I believe that if you put Boruto in a similar scenario, Boruto wouldn't pick the option of pulling the lever, and he wouldn't let those 5 people die. Boruto, based off his character, would find a third option. And it isn't to say that that third option is perfect for the trolley problem, because it doesn't really apply here, but if you apply it in the story, can you really say that Kashin Koji's actions at the moment was the only possible outcome to prevent those 5 people from dying, or in the Boruto case, to prevent the worst future from taking place? As there are characters like Sarada Uchiha who can use genjutsu to end up manipulating and controlling Kobu in this instance. This is an option that most likely Boruto would have figured out. An option 2 where it is the third option, where Kobu doesn't end up dying and the worst future doesn't come to be, because we have Kobu that is under that control. I'm not necessarily saying that Boruto would have picked this one out of every other option, but Boruto would have found a third option for him to pick, whereas Kashin Koji picked the easiest option, which is to kill that person. Oh, it was a moment where Kashin Koji simply had to make that action. No at all, because Kashin Koji knew this before the battle even took place, as he warned Shikamaru of everything that took place. Sarada has been shown to be able to use genjutsu, and there are multiple ways that this Kobu problem could have been solved. Because think about it on Kobu, obviously the story, we want to look at Boruto, we want to cherish Shikamaru, but in all actuality, Kobu is right in a way. Every single action that Shikamaru has done goes against the established structure of what Shikamaru is supposed to be doing. They're not supposed to be working for Boruto, who they view as a traitor. Not saying that Boruto is actually a traitor. So in Kobu's right, he is doing the right thing that you would want people to do. The checks and balances for the Hokage is coming to make sure that the Hokage can't just do whatever he wants to do, but yet he is the one being killed. So in this case, specifically, what Kashin Koji is doing is evil in my opinion, as there are multiple different ways in which you could have tackled the Kobu problem. Genjutsu, Kobu is not a fighter at all, and in my personal opinion, yes, it was an action that prevents the worst future from taking place, as maybe we have Shikamaru that doesn't lose his position as Hokage, but I believe that Boruto acting the way he does will end up influencing that, maybe in a negative way, but regardless, Kashin Koji's only option was not to kill Kobu, and thus, because it wasn't his only option in my opinion, I do believe that Kashin Koji's act in this chapter is 100% evil. And since Kashin Koji is this ultra rational being, it just points to me that there could be really this other person influencing Kashin Koji in a way that he doesn't realize it, but ultimately it is all working towards SHIBAI'S plan. It makes sense perfectly for the story, and we are now seeing the Madara-like way like we saw in Naruto. His name was mentioned, then we slowly started seeing people that were under his control. This is what we're seeing from SHIBAI. First, his name was mentioned in chapter 75. Now, we are slowly seeing how he is integrated in the story. And that's why you have to watch this video right here, as I discuss Boruto's abilities in depth, especially that future ability that will oppose that of Kashin Koji. So make sure to watch this video right here.